Yeah, we're live, but we're also interactive, which means send through your questions on #SafariLive.
Sorry about this, everybody. Perhaps something has pushed over the Gauri repeater, just like the elephants have pushed over this marula.
Sunrise Safari for the second time around once again. Now, it turned out that my introduction was not my first and only introduction, so shall we try that one more time? It's a pity you're missing my hilarious introductions these days, because I actually now know that they're not actually going out. So good morning, my name is Jamie, and this morning I have Dave on camera with me. Steph is out with Gert on Wendy. Hopefully Wounded Wendy will keep working throughout the duration of our Sunrise Safari. We are coming to you live from Djuma, Arathusa and Cheetah Plains Game Reserve in the Sabi Stand in the Great Kruger National Park of South Africa. Not only are we live, but you can also send through your questions on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through on questions@WildEarth.TV. Please do send us through your questions. We love to hear from you. And we're going to start off our morning with a herd of impala. Good morning, guys. We also have Rebecca and Lou in final control, just to finish off our introductions before we talk about these lovely antelope. Impala, also known as rooibok in Afrikaans, because of this lovely red color that they especially adopt when it is a cold, windy morning, as it is this morning. And they've probably had a very scary evening last night. Dark, windy, predators roaming. No sense, and I mean that seriously. As soon as the wind hits, their sense of smell and hearing is immediately compromised. And it becomes very, very scary, and they become very, very skittish. We did actually start off this morning with a herd of elephants, but because it's windy, they also didn't seem to want to stick around, and they went dashing off into the bush. Good morning, Impala. Right, so while we watch our lovely Impala, a quick update on the various things and what you may have missed yesterday on the Sunset Safari. There was a massive herd of buffalo that went across to the Arathusa Dam. I couldn't find Shadow. I don't know where she went. She was seen with a kill on Arathusa, but she had been chased away by a hyena by the time that we got there. And because there were so many vehicle tracks and other tracks around, I couldn't quite figure out exactly where she went. Although I don't think she would have gone too far. Shadow is a female leopard, for those of you who are wondering about that. Karula has been doing her usual mysterious stunts and appears to be crossing backwards and forwards from Djuma and south towards Hoffman's and Little Gowrie. We will be keeping an eye out for her as well. Mvula was on Tambuti Dam Wall, which is to the north of our boundary yesterday, and he wandered south towards Djuma at the end of the evening yesterday. And hopefully he's still around. Mvula is a big male leopard. The lions, having spent sort of 3 days running away from Steph and myself, they are now on the boundary between Buffelshoek and Torchwood, just where we can't go and see them. So to the east of our boundary on a buffalo kill. Though it seems as though potentially there's not that much meat left on the buffalo. I was very, very upset when they decided to catch something just that little bit too far away. But because there's 2 males and 4 females feeding off it, probably 5 at some point during the night, because that 5th lioness must have come through, and 3 very tiny little lion cubs, there's probably not much meat left. Hopefully they decide to come back to us. And that was a summary of all the things that we could potentially see and where everything is that we know about. Onwards we go to search for all magical things. In the meantime, some say at full moon he runs with the hyena clan. Others say the flies recognize him as their true king. All we know is we call him Steph, and he'd like to say good morning.
I must be honest, I don't quite know where Jamie gets all this poetic license from this early in the morning. It would escape my frontal lobe function. I'm Stef Winterboer, and on camera today is Gerrit. And we've literally just stopped here on the road to what looked like a drag mark, to be honest with you. I don't quite know if it is or it isn't. I'm just busy deciding. I'll show you what exactly it was that caught my eye. If you have a look down this line, you'll see that just there in that 2-track, there basically, is a swirl with a bit of vegetation that's been pushed up. A swirl and a push, and that is so indicative of a drag mark. Now, what a drag mark is, is when a leopard or a lion or a hyena even has killed something, quite often what they do is they drag the piece of prey away from the scene of the crime and they stash it somewhere. They either cache it, hyena cache it in water, leopard cache it in tops of trees, lions just simply devour it, but young lions will quite often pull a piece away and eat it in relative security or without the fear of the total carcass being stolen by a bigger lion. But I don't know if it is. I think that's actually just an elephant's trunk that has been swishing. Quite often they do exactly that. They relax their trunk, which then has about this much of their trunk length that can go onto the road. And as they walk and swing their head, the trunk makes this serpentine motion and can sometimes push up the sand. Why I don't think it's a drag mark is that it doesn't carry on going from here onto the other side of the road, and there's lots of elephant tracks around here as well. So, no drag mark, and this was exactly where Mvula was seen last night, which is what immediately got my attention. But he was seen here, he was seen on top of this dam wall. I'm going to show you now. And here's a herd of impala, which could have been a potential victim. This is exactly what Gert wanted to see this morning, so I'm quite happy that I managed to show him what he wanted to see first. These male impala have been going through this very weird thing lately where they've been displaying rutting behavior. That's what you're looking at there is a bush. Let me see if I can take you back to the impala. So generally they chase one another around like this, snorting and blowing in these little bachelor herds during the rut, which is when male impala compete with one another for the attentions of the ladies and for their harem. But right now these groups of male impala have appeared all over the place and are displaying this rutting behavior, and it's I don't know what it is. For me it's an enigma. I'm not too sure why they're doing this. There is some evidence to support a sort of mini rut that happens a few weeks after the main rut, and that's what it could be. It's also what would explain the fact that after the impalas give mass birth around November, December time, that you always find these Christmas babies and January babies, these youngsters, not too many, but these youngsters coming through. And I don't know if it's a way for impala ewes that didn't fall pregnant during the first rut to have a chance at falling pregnant at the second mini rut. I've never read that anywhere, it's just a hypothesis I have. But it doesn't look like any of these impala Michael 18 has pitched me a question this morning. Good morning, Michael. You've said that while there are no gazelle in Djuma, and you've always used the term fawn rather than lamb or calf. Now, to answer your first question, Michael, the one on while there are no gazelle in Djuma, quite simply, gazelle is a collective name for a group of antelope sharing similar characteristics. Most of the buck sort of animals that you're seeing here at Djuma belong to the antelope family, or the antelope group, not to the gazelle group. We do find gazelle in South Africa. They are springbuck, but the springbuck are almost entirely contained within the inland plateau and to the drier desert areas of this country. They are our only gazelle. And then further up in Africa, we do get the Thompson's gazelle. Oh, I've just disconnected myself here. We do get the Thompson's gazelle as well as one or two other types of gazelle-like antelope that occur but further north in Africa and definitely onto the inland plateau. All the antelope that we see here, all the buck-like animals that you see, the even-toed ungulates here, are part of the antilopines, the antelope group of animals. I hope that helped you out there. As to your second one, with regards to a fawn and a lamb, I'm not too sure actually, to be quite honest with you. I don't know where the differentiator would be. It's possibly the difference between a gazelle baby and an antelope baby. One is a fawn and one is a lamb. I'm not too sure. We call them lambs out here. Impalas have lambs. And then as soon as you get from nyala up, so anything bigger than a nyala becomes a calf. So you get a kudu calf, and you get an eland calf, and you get a buffalo calf. You don't get lambs from about nyala upwards. I think it's just probably a language thing, and an area thing rather than anything specific or scientific, if you ask me. But then if you do find anything that can support or discredit that particular statement, you're welcome to send it through to questions at WildEarthTV on emails, or you could use the hashtag Safari Live, and I'll gladly share what the real or what the actual definition of that is. I enjoy learning as much as anybody else, and absolutely don't take offense at being corrected whilst on drive. I actually quite enjoy it. I'd rather be factual than maintain a swollen ego. In actual fact, in almost all cases, I'd prefer that. Alright. My plan for this morning was to just double check here at Tamboti Pan and see if Mvula's tracks cross over. Herbert last night, he was last in the sighting, and he said to me that we could absolutely expect Mvula's tracks to come across the boundary. He was looking with intent south towards Vuyatela Dam and towards Vuyatela. And if I were to paint a picture from what I believe is happening, I believe that Sindile made his way down the Mwati drainage line yesterday from midday all the way through to yesterday evening. And I believe that Mvula, coming out of Buffelshoek on one of his regular patrols, picked up on that fact and maybe came down in the Mwati, which is his stomping ground, and is trying to push Sindile out. Not too sure why I believe that. It just sounds like a plausible theory for what a full-grown male leopard would do in an area that is his. And they tend to keep these young males pushed out to the outskirts of their territory, and then that young male will go into the next leopard's territory until he's found, and then gets pushed out into the next leopard's territory. And it's necessary. Young male leopards will be pushed from territory to territory for up to a couple of years by the dominant male leopard in any given area. And it's good that, because it pushes them out of their natal ranges and stops inbreeding from happening. Except in this particular case, there's something else happening over here that even had the scientist in charge of predator conservation of this area baffled. He says he cannot explain how Sindile, who this is his natal range, who, having been freed in his natal range as an adolescent, basically, managed to do this massive loop, open gate, which is from here roughly 80 kilometers away, all the way to Skukuza, which is from here about 100 kilometers away, and then made this big loop back to join on Father's Day, as you so luckily saw, to join his mother back on Djuma again, and hasn't left since then. Has basically been hanging around this area, sometimes going into the Manyeleti, sometimes going out towards the Kruger boundary, but mainly just hanging around in this area. Why isn't he leaving? He says he doesn't know. Part of that 80-20 theory that he pitched at me the other day. 80% of the times animals will behave like we've studied them to behave, and like we know of, to 20% of the time behaving like nothing you've ever seen before. What's going on?
Oh no, it seems as though Steph has relatively quickly disappeared off your screens, as you can imagine, or as you all know by now. Bringing you a live safari from the center of the African bushveld does result in the occasional minor signal dip. Now, having spoken a bit about the windy weather, you know what, if you do several drives straight, you forget your mastery of the English language. Not that I ever claim to have had a mastery of the English language, but I'm certainly struggling now. On a windy day, everything wants to hide away. They often go and they lie down. They're nervous first of all, and then second of all, most of the animals are trying to reduce the amount of surface area that's being exposed to this cutting wind. So a lot of them are harder to find because they've ducked down. However, I have got an update which has changed my plans ever so slightly. I have been sucked into Karula's net. She crossed back into Djuma with her cubs sometime last night. We are going to go and just check out a few of her favorite areas before we make our way to Cheetah Plains. I also have to confess, I don't know that a trip to Cheetah Plains this morning is such a good idea with this weather. Because if it's windy like this where we are right now, that open area, we could basically put the car in neutral and sail around the clearing, which, whilst it would be thoroughly entertaining, probably not conducive to your safari experience. It actually almost feels like in fact it really feels like it's going to rain. And hello to Porridge Silt. And absolutely not, you are not watching a caged safari. Trust me, you've only had to have seen the last few drives where we didn't find anything in order to believe us. Now, caged silt, if you want to do a little bit of research, you can have a look at where Djuma and Arathusa fall in the Sabi sand. Basically, we are connected. Actually, let's stop, because if we look east, I mean, we're not quite high enough to see it. Yes, essentially there are fences here, as there are fences everywhere, but we are open to the Kruger National Park, which puts us, and that includes the surrounding areas, Manyeleti, Timbavati, Klasiri, Bululi, into Mozambique, into Zimbabwe, and then of course the greater Kruger National Park area itself that you are currently looking across the vast expanse of. All in all, it gives us a wilderness area that is larger than a lot of small countries, including the country of Wales. It equates to 8.5 million acres, or close to 4 million hectares of unfenced wilderness area, depending upon where you happen to be from, Porridge Silt. So no, you're definitely not watching a caged safari, I can promise you that. The way that our animals evade us, if you need any proof, as I said, the last 3 days they've all been running away from us. Now, no caged safaris here. Every single animal here is completely 100% wild. The only thing I can tell you though is that through years and years of very ethical guiding within the Sabi sand, the animals have become completely comfortable with the presence of the vehicles. It's an area that relies upon tourism in order to promote conservation. The money that tourists bring in order for money to come in from tourists, they need to be able to see animals, and that is one of the focuses of the Sabi sand. And it has been done to the point that the animals, we're kind of as much of a part of their lives as a tree or a termite mound. Not quite. I'm not going to try and stretch things to say that we're basically a natural extension of the environment. We're not. But the animals are relatively relaxed around the vehicles. Sometimes. But every now and again we encounter an animal that has come in from a complete wilderness area. The other day we saw some elephants from the Kruger National Park that I suspect it's been a long time since they've seen safari vehicles, and might even have been the first time seeing our filming vehicle, which looks completely different. We do this twice a day, every day, Porridge Silt, And some of our regular viewers, a lot of our regular viewers, have been watching for years and years, and as a result have got to know all of our characters extremely well. Their tragedies and their joys and their triumphs. And right now I'm looking for one such example, which is a leopard with two 5-month gorgeous 5-month-old cubs that we've basically all fallen in love with. I hope you stay with us, Porridge Silt, and we can find you something. Oh, if you ever needed an example that our animals are wild, there goes a racing Dacre. It was a grey Dacre. Oh, stopped. Where? You got his tail. Awesome. Well done, Dave. There we go. A grey or a common Dacre. As I said, windy days. And if you combine that with a Dacre's naturally nervous nature, and off it goes. Very sweet little antelope. Tiny little creatures. Okay, what else can we find you on this wonderfully non-caged safari? It's one of those days that started off warm and is now freezing. Good point. Good point from Justin S. An observation more than anything else. So I'm going to try and get you a view of these birds because we don't always get to look at them. We see their red-billed and their yellow-billed cousins more regularly. We don't often stop to look at the grey hornbill. Sorry, Justin, I'll get back to you in one moment. Oh, bye-bye. I will get back to you right now. Justin S., on the subject of our leopard characters, has observed or feels that the hyenas seem to harass Shadow or steal her kills more often than the other leopards, and why might that be? I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. One is Shadow is not very good at putting her kills in a tree. Have the hyenas learnt that? I don't know. It's a stretch to say that they have, but hyenas are very, very intelligent. It's not impossible that they've learned to dog her footsteps, so to speak. I don't know what the hyena-friendly term for that would be. I don't think so, though. I think it's more the fact that she just doesn't hoist. Therefore, the average marauding hyena sniffing around will have a chance to find her. Secondly, apparently, I've never actually got the total numbers, but apparently the hyena clan in her territory, in fact, she's on the border between our clan's territory and a clan from Elephant Plains and Arathusa that is supposedly exceptionally large. We've seen at least 15 of them feeding around that baby hippo carcass once, so we know that there are lots of them around, and I think that might be one reason as well. And perhaps some leopards just have more of a talent for avoiding hyena action than others. That being said, I don't necessarily think she's been targeted that much more than the other leopards. And Karula loses her kills to hyenas all the time. She's just slightly better at hoisting, whether it is because she's stronger or because she's got better instincts, I don't know. It's a fact that we speculate alongside Shadow's skill as a mother, which I always find a bit sad to talk about because I feel that she's just been incredibly unlucky. But there's no doubt that Karula has beaten the odds many, many times. She is an exception to a rule. And the extraordinary, and of course for new viewers such as Porridge Silt, Shadow is Karula's oldest daughter, alongside her twin sister Tundi. All three of whom, Karula, Tundi and Shadow, have young cubs at the moment. We've yet to see Tundi's, they're still very, very tiny. But we have seen Shadow's little girl and Karula's little boy and girl. That I'm really, really hoping we can find for you today. Okay, now we're going to do a quick summary for Motor on the ages of our various cubs, and with pleasure Motor I will update you on the ages. Karula's cubs are nearly 6 months old. They must be, 5.5 months old at this point. They were born on the 2nd of February. Shadow's cub is around 4 months old. We don't know its exact date of birth, but it's probably around 4 or so months, maybe 4.5 months old. Been a while since we've seen the little thing as well. The lion, Tundi's cubs are a couple of weeks. I'm not sure exactly when they were born. My days tend to blur into one, but I would say that they were born sometime at the beginning of July. So they're only a couple of weeks old. Our lion cubs are the oldest set. We think is close to, let's see, when we last saw them we said must be close to about 10 or so weeks old, coming up to 3 months now. They're definitely starting to look robust and strong, like little I'm sorry, I'm being indecisive about where I want to go. We're gonna go this way. Just go backwards quickly. The youngest set of cubs is, when did we start seeing them? They must be close to 3.5 weeks, maybe even 4. Possibly a bit younger. Yeah, 3.5-ish weeks old. So they're very, very tiny. When we first saw them, their ears hadn't even popped up yet. They were probably about 10 days old. There might be a third set of Nkuhuma cubs, or there may not be. Certainly 3 lionesses had suckle marks. The third lioness has been mating with a Birmingham boy, and she seems to have been stuck mating with the Birmingham boy for the last few days. We haven't managed to find her. We don't know if she has cubs or if she doesn't. We have no idea at this stage. But we're not discounting the possibility just yet. But we don't know how old they are, obviously. Okay, so I think that, Inkanyeni, who has, I think, still one remaining. Unfortunately, it looks as though she's only got 1 cub. She lost one of them, I don't know which one, and we don't know how. But her cubs must be, what are they now? 7-8 months old. Getting big. Not that I've ever managed to see them just yet, but they're around. They are around. Alright, now of course this is Steph's last. Steph doesn't often get to drive you guys around, and this is Steph's last day for now, because Brent will be back tomorrow. So hence the bizarre introductions, just to explain a little bit behind the humor. However, they say his strength is derived from drinking a potion made from elephant dung water, which is an in-joke, by the way, but only if you were watching the Father's Day specials. Others say the deep, manly boom of his voice is able to communicate rumbles at a frequency that elephants can hear hundreds of kilometers away. All we know is we call him Steph.
I'm starting to get more and more worried about that one now, Jamie. I think that the sun has been beating down upon her brow for way too long. I have to stake her out and let her dry out a bit. No, we've checked the den site, the lion den site here at Buffelshoek Dam. No activity, not even a footprint. And I'm beginning to think that Gert's prediction about this lioness having moved her cubs potentially is not far from the truth. Lions will quite often move den sites, frequently in actual fact, when cubs are this young, and I think that this is maybe one of those things. It could also possibly be just our timing, and it could also possibly be the fact that they have killed a buffalo quite close by, and that the female may even have taken the cubs. I don't think she would have. Those cubs are still too young. No, she hasn't taken the cubs to feed there, but she may have just moved them, or she came back in the night time, fed them a little bit, and now they're back, or she's back at least, at the carcass site. But definitely no activity. What I'm going to check though is Buffelshoek Dam. It is one of the closer water points to this particular kill, and perhaps if we're lucky, we'll find something drinking there. On a cold, windy day, overcast day like today, dams are not going to be very popular. Animals will use the colder temperatures to actually get into areas that they cannot normally get to because of fear of heat exhaustion. So I have no doubt that today we will see that these animals will be dispersed. Now, Jamie McCartan, you've asked me if animals hibernate for winter here. Jamie, it doesn't get that cold that animals need to build up reserves that will last them through a time when there's absolutely no food. In other words, when there's lots of snow cover on the ground that covers up vegetation, or it just becomes so debilitating, the cold, that animals use more energy keeping warm than what they can ingest from the available food sources out in the bush. Here, even though it does get very dry, as you can see, and food sources are very limited, they don't really hibernate. We do get some snakes and of course frogs and tortoises go into a dormancy period that is similar to hibernation. I would say that the closest here that we get to hibernation is probably the tortoises, which go into a sort of slumber during the coldest months of the year here, when there's absolutely no wet vegetation for them to feed on. So I think that that's probably the closest, but definitely nothing like you find in the northern hemisphere, where animals basically go and ensconce themselves in a cave or cavern and have their... Okay, so the lioness tracks go down the road here. So she did actually visit the den site last night and join this road going in this direction, which is good news. At least we know that she's still in this particular area. Where she went to after that, I'm not too sure. The tracks have been blown over by the wind that has been basically just buffeting these tracks since last night. In actual fact, oh no, the tracks are still on the road, on the left-hand side. Let's go down and check the water. We may just be lucky. If all of you in your minds start to project all your wishes at your screens right now, think lioness. Let's see if we're lucky enough to change, or to, let's say, have some luck thrown our way. Alright, while we approach Buffelshoek Dam, Jamie's got some zebra and impala to show you.
We do indeed. We have a lovely collection of zebra and impala to show you, all standing, staring off into the distance. You know that it's going to be an interesting drive when you show Rebecca some zebra and she goes, "Hallelujah!" So we do indeed have a combination. Safety in numbers prevails once again. We have a social aggregation of impala and zebra. And in this case, a bachelor herd of impala, still a little bit jumpy around each other, along with what looks like a breeding herd of zebra. Now that is the stallion that is walking behind the rest of the group amongst the rams. You can tell by the thin strip of black between the cheeks of his bottom underneath his tail. And you could be forgiven for thinking that he looks too round to be a male, that perhaps he might be a pregnant female. That's because zebra are always round. They always look as though they are in good condition, because their digestive process produces a large amount of gas, which in turn swells their bellies up in a barrel-like fashion. The only way to tell that a zebra is starting to struggle in terms of nutrition is if their mane starts to flop to the side. That is the first indicator. Something we haven't seen yet, and I'm hoping that we don't get to see as we carry on into our dry season and into the drought. And giving us a lovely indication of how well stripes work in terms of sort of blurring one animal's outline into the others. So he's got his harem. It will be led by the female, the head female. She will walk in front into the wind. All of the animals at the moment will start feeding into the wind so that they can smell an advancing predator. So she will walk ahead, make sure that she's ready to smell anything that might come past, that might be in front of them. And the stallion protects the rear of the herd. Dave, do you think we can look at those hardy-dars? Sorry. A flock of hardy-dars. And it becomes even funnier. I was always told when I was a kid that the reason they make that call is because they're really afraid of heights. which becomes really funny when you imagine them flying through the air going, ah! A hardy-dar ibis. They're not, of course, afraid of heights. Well done, Dave. And off our hardy-dars go. Back to our bachelor herd of impala. My suspicion is that the pregnancy hormones is what's causing the false rutting-like behavior. They're definitely too late to get lucky with any of the ladies. But because most of the females are pregnant, I think the initial pregnancy hormone, the spike of progesterone, and other pregnancy hormones is causing a sort of a false estrus type impression amongst the males. Also, I think just the residual hike in testosterone on the male's part. They get a bit more jumpy around each other. They've just become so used to every time they walk past a male getting challenged that that behavior sticks around for a little while. They're looking good though. Still in very good condition. Hello, boy. Now that's a gland, by the way, on the top of his head there, between his horns. There is a story amongst the sort of the guiding fraternity, one of those things that I feel might have been started as a partial joke or a partial misunderstanding of the facts. Oh, he's got an interesting ear as well. But the idea is that the impala time their mating and their breeding and their births by that gland on the top of their head that is geared towards registering daylight hours. So essentially in the shorter days of the year they start to mate in May, and as the days start to get longer towards the summer solstice, they then give birth. I don't think so. I think that sounds a little bit of a stretch of the truth. There's probably definitely a hormonal function of that gland, that we can be sure. But whether or not it is measuring day length, I think might be a bit of a stretch of one's imagination. But certainly it will play a role in their hormones, or at least giving an indication of their hormones. So one of the reasons that impala thrash the trees when they are going through their rut, first of all, it's to look very, very intimidating, often results in scratched eyes, but it also spreads their scent from that gland and the preorbital glands around their eyes onto the various branches. Impala are just full of mystery scent glands. They've got 2 on the back of their back legs as well. The metatarsal glands. Also, the purpose of which is a mystery, in a way. There's lots of theories, but the truth is we don't totally know. And our lovely impala, always very svelte looking, although they are quite puffed up at the moment, but very svelte looking, because they spend a large percent of their time grooming themselves and each other. Well, not right now. Right now they're sort of at slight war with each other. But they do allo groom, and they've got special loose teeth in their bottom jaw for that exact purpose. Which is why they always look so incredibly tidy. Bit puffed up right now though. Okay, let's carry on our search for the lovely Karula. Before I start up, Tony's looking at the clouds above our heads and was wondering whether I think we might get rain. Tony, as you know, my meteorological skill is quite fantastic. My predictions are always 100% wrong. It certainly feels like rain, let's put it that way. And there was some rain predicted, but I mean our weathermen are about as accurate as I am. We're in a bit of competition there in terms of our accuracy. I think if it does rain, it's going to be 2 drops. Maybe a light drizzle, enough to dampen us, and to sort of add to the chill factor, but not enough to really make any kind of difference to the water situation out here. Unfortunately, I'd love to tell you different. I'd love to tell you we're about to get a solid, nice drizzle for the next 3 days, but I don't think that that's going to happen, unfortunately. But, as I said, I'm always wrong, so who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. Apparently it rained in Nelspruit, which isn't too far away from us. You never know. Hopefully, it does decide to rain. That being said, the rain now will fill the dams, but it won't make a difference to the plant life, which is past its growth season. It needed the rain before, it will need the rain in the future, but right now it's not going to make that much of a difference to most of, at least the grass life out here. It's past its growing stage of the year. Okay, wait, hold on a second, I'm not ready to link yet. I've forgotten what I was going to say about Steph. Oh no, I'm running out of ideas. What were we going to say, Dave? Oh yes, some say that all he needs to start a fire is the click of his fingers and his very special cotton wool ball. Others say, oh, I'm going to repeat one because you missed it the first time. Others say he was raised by a friendly family of battaliers. All we know is that we call him Steph.
I feel like I was raised by a friendly family of badgers, to be quite honest with you, if that's exactly what Jamie said. I got a bit garbled there halfway through. I don't know what we're going to do with this one. I'd gladly take any suggestions that you have at the moment. I'm quite enjoying this drive today, to be quite honest. It seems that it feels like it's going to rain, it smells like it's going to rain. There's this like rainy smell in the air at the moment. But yeah, it might not. It's not uncommon to get rain in these months, to be quite honest with you, especially with the hardcore cold fronts that come up from the Western Cape and from Antarctica. And it does rain sometimes. They make for incredibly uncomfortable safari days when you have a freezing cold front come through with rain and you have to go out on safari and see nothing and get hypothermia. But that I don't think is going to happen today. Today's just one of those days that are just going to be overcast and a bit blustery, which is fine. I like these days. So Chimera, you've asked if we get snow anywhere, and in all the years that I've been in the Sabi Sands, I haven't seen snow in the Lowveld. Here it stays a little bit too warm and it's a little bit too dry for snow to happen. But I can't remember what year it was, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago. There was snow on the Drakensberg that we could see from the Sabi Sand. So every now and again, those sunset shots where you have the Drakensberg in the distance there, the tallest peak is called Maripskop. On top of Maripskop one year there was just this blanket of snow. It was absolutely beautiful and we could see it from here. We of course were still in shorts and only a thin jacket, although I must say that day I got very close to unpacking my long pants from the plastic wrapper that they arrived in, 10 or 12 years ago. But so no, it doesn't snow here, Chimera. It's just a little bit too warm, a little bit too dry, and we're a little bit too close to the ocean for that to happen here at this particular latitude. But definitely on the higher peaks in the Drakensberg, which is a ridge of mountain that circles the inland plateau, pretty much continuous all the way from Lesotho, a couple of 100 kilometers from here, all the way through to this part of the northern Drakensberg range here, and that does get snow from time to time in winter time. Alright, now we're about to turn onto Cheetah Cutline. And Cheetah Cutline is important because it separates one drainage line system from another. It separates the Mulwati drainage line. Actually, it doesn't. This is just two very big arms of the Mulwati drainage line. Because if I'm picturing in my mind the Mulwati, it actually becomes relatively big further down there and then joins a big river called the Nwati Tsonso River, some word that I absolutely love using from time to time. And that Nwati Tsonso River then flows into the Kruger National Park and flows past a picnic spot called Chokwan, which is in every South African's forefront of his mind. It's the first time you get out of your father or your mother's car on a Kruger trip and make a breakfast around an open fire in the middle of the park. These memories just sort of come back. And so quite a special place, to be quite honest with you. And this is the start of that particular river. This is its drainage basins, where the rain that falls here flows down these rivulets and eventually goes past Chokwan, and from Chokwan I think it breaks through the Lubombo mountain ranges and joins, I'm trying to think now which river it would join. It will either join the Sabi River or it will join the Letaba River. I'm not too sure which one it joins actually, and that'll be on the Mozambican side of Africa, on the other side of the Lubombo mountain range. I've just been asked to explain that rattling. As you can see, the road in the dry season here develops what we call ruts. And ruts is where you get this compression of sand and a dip and a trough. And you can see basically there, those are ruts, those little waves, and they set up a resonance in the car, and that shakes our poor aerial mount to pieces. And that shaking that you're hearing is this resonance being produced, and the aerial going like this against its bracket, which of course when Brent drives this car shakes that bracket to pieces. We've now replaced the poor thing probably 6 or 7 times after Brent's enthusiastic use of the equipment, including his car here. Right, I do need to keep my ear on the radio. Naomi in Pretoria today, Pretoria, South Africa. Good morning, Naomi. You've asked you've remarked that you said that you've seen some trackers sitting on the front of the vehicle in the Sabi Sands, and isn't it dangerous? Naomi, in all my years of having trackers on the front of the car, I can say I can count on my one hand the amount of times where the tracker was the focus point of an attack and a focus charge. That's generally a car, and generally the occupants at the back of the car, as much as what tourists don't want to hear that, but generally someone waving crazily or standing up or pointing wildly at a leopard is the focus of a charge, more so than anything else. And so no, I don't think that it's particularly dangerous. There are some areas where trackers are the focus. Sabi Sands has had safaris going in them for, I don't know, 60 years odd, somewhere around there. And I think that animals are quite used to seeing that shape. I've worked in places that are much wilder than this, and there definitely you don't want to leave anyone hanging out the front of the car, and we absolutely don't do that. We bring trackers into the car when we are in sightings in other places in Africa, and yeah, you just absolutely don't want to do that. You know, you want to keep your options open. You don't want to go and set up an innocent just because you're sticking to tradition. Right, combing these areas. What I'm hoping for here is the fact that some of those lions that were eating on that buffalo in Torchwood have come back this side after having fed and have a full belly. But I'm seeing no evidence of any footprints. The freshest footprints of lion that I saw were the footprints for that female lion around that den site. Virginia, all the way from Kentucky. Good evening, Virginia. It's deep in the night there for you. You've asked if the lions take kills back to their cubs in the den sites. Virginia, I've never seen a lioness take a kill to cubs. I've almost always seen them bring their cubs to kills. And I don't quite know why. Almost every other cat will bring kills to their cubs at the den site, including hyena, with the exception of cheetah. They don't really do that. But lions just seem to do it the other way around. They just seem to have another way of doing it, really. They quite often will come back to suckle the cubs and then walk all the way back to feed again themselves, leaving the cubs unattended. And then from about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, the cubs start, the mother will go and fetch the cubs at the den site, bring them through to the kills, and they'll sit there with the kills, tasting meat for the first time, not really joining in the frenzy that is feeding around a carcass, but definitely tasting meat when they can, and then suckling right there from their moms, which is of course an energy saver for the moms. And then from there, basically just trying to trail and keep up with the pride. The mother will stash them in hidey places, go and hunt, they kill something, she'll come back, fetch the cubs, and they'll play this sort of hopscotch game until they're fit enough to keep up with the pride on their nightly forays. Scanning the bush today. It's on a grey day like this that all the colours in the bush for me come out. It's not this sort of washed out colours that the sun gives us. You can definitely see, even here where we are now, we're in a thicket where we've got quite a few different colours going. From this side over here, these bright greens of this weeping wattle and of the guaris, that deeper, darker shade of green there. And then as we pan off to the left, we'll see that the colours change on these combretums, and you'll see the oranges and the golds and even some reds in some cases of these trees coming out. Have a look at that, very different. And then of course the greys of the leafless trees. There is a haunting beauty about a dry season thicket or forest like we're looking at now, parkland like we're in it. But I must say, I do enjoy the vibrance of summer. I'm picturing in my mind that electric green, swaying grasslands that we get here in January and February. And for some reason, I'm yearning for those. I like summer. Summer for me is the best time of the year, only because it... Excuse me, breaking off while I'm busy speaking to you there. I've got much safari voices happening in my ear from radio. I'm still busy practicing how to talk and listen and think about two different things at the same time. Something that my colleagues are getting better and better at every day, and I seem to be lagging behind on. What was I talking about? Oh, summertime. So I enjoy summertime a lot because my interests lie in insects and in plants and flowers and in the smaller creepy crawly things around the bush. That's where my passion lies at the moment. It changes from year to year. Some years I enjoy butterflies, other years I enjoy spiders, some years I enjoy snakes, other years I enjoy grasses, and that way it sort of spices up the year. So I don't quite know what's going to hold my interest in the year to come. We'll wait and see. I don't know yet either. These things sort of make themselves clear as the year progresses, and whatever is the dominant life form at a particular time grabs my interest, really. Alright, I just have to listen to the radio a little bit. Excuse me, looking vacantly at my radio, hoping for an answer to come out of it. Mike Steph, sorry, I've just been presenting and hence my radio comms are a little bit intermittent. Just confirm I'm still first standby. Copy that, thank you very much. I'm probably with you in the next sort of 4 to 5 minutes or so. Now for those of you who know how our radio procedures work, you'd know that I don't go onto the Game Drive radio very often while I'm live, and that means that there's something lying in store for us in Frontier in about 4 to 5 minutes, so absolutely stay tuned in. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Let's see if you can guess what it is. And to be quite honest with you, I'm actually not quite sure what it is myself. I called myself into a sighting thinking it was one thing. It may very well be something completely different. We're going to be coming to a split in the road up front. I'm going to be going left to see what's happening. Right, and I think while we sort out the administration that needs to happen around this particular surprise that I have in store for you, it would be a good idea to go through and spend some time with Jamie quickly, as you will be back with me shortly. See you in a bit.
I have to admit I'm having a good chuckle because I think Steph's surprise is going to be very much a surprise to him as well. I know what it is. Because I wasn't presenting at the time, so I've been listening. I know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you either. In the meantime, Aubrey and I are hot on the heels of Karula and her cubs. I say hot on the heels. We're warm on the heels of Karula and her cubs, or at least we sort of vaguely know where Karula and her cubs went, which is this way, towards Twin Dams. And Aubrey's taking Elephant Skull, which I just called Elephant Carcass on the Game Drive channel, and he gave me that silence. That disapproving silence on the other end of a radio. Maybe you don't, but I got the disapproving silence through the radio for a moment, and he picked up and went, okay, I'll drive Elephant Skull then. Okay, sorry Aubrey. For some reason Elephant Skull and Carcass, that road name confuses me. Anyway, moving on from my lack of ability to learn road names, we're coming through to a road I do know very well, which is called Twin Dams Road. Karula likes to stay in this portion of the reserve at the moment with her cubs. That seems to be her general pattern. And she's often left her cubs on the road called, I can't even remember which one it is now, it's Elephant Skull. That's where we had them playing for about 2 days recently. On their own, just entertaining themselves, being thoroughly well behaved as only leopard's cubs can be well behaved. I'm going to guess that, interesting. I'm going to guess and say that this is where Karula crossed last night. And the reason I say that is because there are a whole load of vehicle tracks here. In the dirt. I don't see her tracks, but I do see vehicle tracks, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is where she went across and her vehicles were with her last night. Checking in the trees. Our little cubs, from what Aubrey said, it sounds as though little cubs are becoming more and more independent. He said that one of the cubs actually crossed south without her, disappeared off for a while before rejoining her. And that is a natural part of it, and you might find, with no guarantees, you might find that that's the female cub, because the females do start to show a great deal of independence at around this age. Shungile is going to be the one that starts to practice hunting first. They both will, but she will may even be the one that masters it first, because she's certainly got a level of grace to her, the way that she comports herself, that I think bodes well for Karula's cubs. Just check really carefully around here. Onto Twin Dams, which is doing a very good imitation of Lake Kariba. Oh, Christopher, your question perhaps well placed for me to ask the advice of many of our other viewers. However, Christopher wants to know how many leopards that we see are a direct descendant of Karula. Chris, Shadow, Tandi, her twin daughters, her oldest twin daughters. We haven't seen Shinvidzi, but we have seen Shimbambalana recently. That is her son. Mishu and Induna we haven't seen, so we won't count those. And then Quarantine and Kunuma, both her sons. And therefore, Shadow's Sindile is her grandson, just to carry on with the thing. As well as Shadow's new cub is her granddaughter. Am I missing the direct descendants? That pretty much sums it up. All of the leopards in the area will have some degree of genetic connection. They may well share fathers. In fact, the father of Karula's cubs may well be the same father as Shadow's current cub. Leopard's not bound by human rules in terms of social norms. There we go. I think have I got everything? Djuma, 19. Have I missed one? No, I think that's, in terms of direct relations, that's it. I don't know that she has any sisters around here or any brothers that are in this area that we would see. But as I said, there will be a level of genetic connection amongst all of the, especially the female leopards, because of course female leopards, they hang around in their mother's territory. Let's just go, I mean, it's ridiculous, there's no chance. But I always pass these jackalberry trees and think what a perfect leopard tree they would be. So we might as well go and have a look. One day, it will be a leopard tree. Rebecca doesn't share my optimism. Rebecca says to me, when you pass the jackalberry tree and there's no leopard in it, okie dokie. One more jackalberry tree if that's okay, Rebecca, and there's not a leopard in that one. I might check this one though. That's alright. Goes the go-away bird with a derisive tone. They're not. Sorry, Rebecca, your faith was misplaced, as was mine. Alright, I hope you are all gearing up for Steph's surprise, because, wait for it, some say the day he was born, the arrow-marked babblers and the go-away birds were silent for a day out of respect. Others say that when he dreams in the language of ants. All we know is we call him Steph, and he has a surprise for you. Poor Steph.
I really don't know what else to do except just shake my head in shame that I'm associated with peers who have obvious higher brain functions but cannot put them to use. Anyway, we have finally got the surprise for you, and let me tell you, after 3 days of looking at nothing but dust, sand and leaves, trying to convince you that we know what we're doing, we have finally found that mating pair, and you are just about to witness something. Let's see. No, she's not interested. No, there's still, there we go, obviously behind all the bushes for you. So you can see now, let's see what she does now. Not a very frantic mating. She's rolling on her back there. That's a sure sign that it was a successful copulation. Busy yawning. One of the Birmingham boys, and it looks like one of the Nkuhuma lioness. Isn't that wonderful to see? Not the actual act, but the fact that these two have come together again after all this months and months of strife. He's now just sort of asserting his dominance, not over her, but literally just over the area. He'll take some time now to just looking for a place here through the bushes where it's going to give us a better view of one or the other. How's that, Kat? Yeah, that's a little bit better. So even though males are associated to prides and would seem dominant over those prides because they steal kills from the female, they're well known to the females, females don't react aggressively to what we call pride males. They definitely are not the same thing. They can hardly even be called a proper pride when you consider males and females together. Females tolerate the dominant males in an area around them because of the fact that they are the strongest males in the areas that they live in at that particular time, and that gives their babies the best chance of survival. So the females are actually the custodians of the strength of a pride, of the genetic strength of lions in a particular area, and are actually the treasure troves. Male lions compete with one another over an area that has female lions in, and the strongest males are the ones that make it to maturity, and the strongest males are the ones that have mating rights with the females. It's not necessarily the same thing. In other words, being the custodians of lion strength as a whole and being the strongest male in an area is not necessarily they're not the same game plan. They're two different game plans. And what you're looking at him, he's in attendance with this female, and you could see after he finished mating, he first walked one way and yawned and stood up nice and straight and looked the other way and yawned and was bristling. That's just him showing anyone or anything in the area how big and how dominant he actually is, and her. Females can actually hold off ovulating for almost 100 days, where they will give any male in an area the opportunity to try and usurp the male that's in attendance with her. And if she doesn't feel that this male is up to the task, they will absolutely withhold ovulating until the last possible minute. They can withhold it up to 100 days. Then their bodies will have to ovulate, and then whatever dominant male is in the area will have a chance of mating with those females. And in lion poor areas, in areas where lions have been hunted or persecuted, it's not uncommon for inbreeding to happen. As a species, the females will know that to keep lion numbers there, to keep the species going in an area, they will sometimes have to inbreed. It does happen often, in actual fact, leopard and lion populations. And they're quite resilient to that, except for the fact that after some time you will start getting problems with size, health problems, and in fringe areas, in areas where lions live in under very difficult conditions, it's not uncommon to find lions with no manes, females with manes, much smaller cats, abnormally large cats, just bizarre throwings around of stuff, and it's all because of this mixings. Kruger National Park, we don't have that, luckily. All the game reserves in South Africa are fenced off from local populations, and so you don't have this intense competition between people and animals. So you have very healthy populations of both people and animals living literally right next door to one another. I mean, our local village here is no more than, I would say, 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers from where our camp is, and a completely different system to what we live in right here. Isn't that amazing though, hey? Aubrey, you've just asked me if this is the female with suckle marks, and you know, as she rolled over onto her back there, I tried to see if she had any prominent suckle marks. I'm going to say that I didn't see anything prominent, and that's the second part of your question. What do they look like? Suckle marks look exactly like circles around the nipple where the hair has been flattened with the saliva and the excess milk that cubs leave behind after they've been suckling on those nipples. So quite often in the early stages it's just flattened hair, and as soon as the cubs have their teeth, their little milk teeth, and start to lick that area to force mom basically into feeding them, those patches of skin become quite bare and can even start to bleed and look quite sore. In this particular case, I haven't seen this female yet, although I must be honest, I just had a very, very brief visual of that, and I'm sure as we spend a little bit more time here, we should see another mating occur. We should see her roll onto her back again, and it will give us another opportunity to have a look at that. Now, mating occurs can occur at any time during the year. Cubs are born at any time during the year. There seems to be a flush of cubs though towards the end of the year, sort of Christmas time. Although females will give birth at any time, and it's literally dictated to by how the pride dynamics are rather than the seasons. But there is a slight increase in cub births in an area in summertime. I think it sort of coincides with the abundance of game that give birth at the same time. A lot of babies around, moms have got a lot of food, and so it's easier just to have more cubs survive, more cubs get born during that time. Now, this mating will last for about 5 days. I think this is probably about day 3 or 4. We'll see what the frequency of mating is. As it reaches its height, a male lion will mate with a female probably every 3 to 5 minutes for about 24 hours or so, and then it'll start to taper off again to about once the hairy goes again. So this is probably now every 5 to 10 minutes or so. So I'd say this is... Where's she going? She grabbed her tail in his mouth to stop her. Oh, she's trotting away. She actually does look like she's got suckle marks, I'll be honest with you. She absolutely looks like she's got suckle marks, so he's covering her again. Also just behind a bush, of course. Successful copulation, there she's rolling over. Now, quite often males become relatively pesky during matings. They don't want to leave females alone. The female that has got babies, potentially even from another male lion, will quite often elicit sort of mating behavior. Their bodies are giving off pheromones. Their bodies are giving off pheromones very similar to, or hormones I should say, rather than pheromones, very similar to those given off when she's not pregnant. And quite often females that are just pregnant, even by another male from a different pride, will mate with that pride male so that he thinks that the babies that are born are his and not the different males from a different pride. Of course, if he figured that out, he'd kill those babies, and that'll bring this female into estrus again, and then he'd be able to mate with her and get his own progeny into the gene pool. So yeah, a mystery at the moment. And Hollow25 has just asked, if she still does have cubs, hasn't he kept her away from those cubs for far too long? And would they have died? Hollow, potentially. It depends on how old those cubs are. Lions do cooperative nursing. In other words, a different female will be able to suckle another female's cubs. They definitely do that. And but that'll all depend on how old those cubs are. If she's just had babies and has lost them, it could either be as a result of predation. Don't forget that cub mortality is incredibly high. 80% of all the cubs born in a given year die before they are 1 year old. And the primary cause of that death is predation from other predators. So hyena, leopard, other lion, basically just almost anything. Cubs are highly vulnerable, and literally the chance of a cub making it to adolescence and then into adulthood is actually quite slim, to be honest with you. So there's a good chance that maybe she's lost her cubs. Females can... So James Richards has just asked if this female is having a postpartum sort of estrus cycle and wants to know how long that'll last. Will it be similar to a a normal estrus cycle? To be honest with you, James, I don't know. I haven't observed lions as closely as that for as long. Generally speaking, I would say that in my experience, yes, it's about as long, maybe shortened probably by 2 days, maybe 3 days maximum out of a 5 to 7 day cycle. So it could be shorter significantly. Is it something that I've noticed? Is it something that I've picked up on? No, I haven't seen that many. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I've seen male and female lions mating, I don't know. Let me think back here now. Over the years, probably 20 times, 25 times. It's definitely not enough for me to judge exactly how long that is. And since I'm not a scientist and don't study these things and read scientific papers endlessly, to answer a question like this would be quite difficult for me with any sort of reasonable fact in it. I can only really just talk to you from my observations. So, good question there, James. Nice one. All right, let's go back to these lions and have a look at what they're doing. The female now is quite relaxed. Male is also just in attendance. They become quite painful, I must be honest with you. You can see she'll try and get away for as long as she can, but until her body stops giving off the pheromones that is eliciting this behavior from this male, he will not leave her alone. Anthony, you've just asked me, or Anthony Law, you've just asked me, why do they always change location when they're mating like that? Anthony, it's literally just a female trying to give any other males in the area the chance to cover her as well. So although there is only one male here, it's an instinctual behavior to let her just get a bit of space in case there was another male that could possibly usurp this particular male. And it's why she leads this little chase. He then is forced to dominate and cover her, and that in turn basically elicits that releasing of the egg function in her body. So she needs to be dominated before her body will release the eggs to be fertilized. And there are some facts floating around that lions literally need to mate 1,000 times for every one cub that gets born. As you can imagine, that's a lot of mating for every baby that makes it to 1 year of age. Just gives you an idea of how difficult it is actually for lions to maintain healthy pride numbers and to keep lions in any particular area there. They're quite often one of the first animals to disappear in an area, and in actual fact, lion numbers have decreased so dramatically over the last 20 years that almost entirely lions are now ensconced within national parks that do not occur in wild populations outside of national parks, with the exception, I believe, of Namibia. Namibia is or has the last wild lion populations outside of natural reserves or wildlife preserves, and that is a great sadness in this world of ours. I do not believe that we will ever get to a point in our lifetimes or our kids' lifetimes again where we see free roaming wild lions outside of national parks. And even my child and perhaps even his child in the future will battle to see lions. In the Kruger National Park, roughly 3.5 million hectares, the latest census suggests that there are less than 1,000 lions. So less than 1,000 of these great cats left. In the Kruger National Park. As to a total world population of these cats, I'm not actually sure. I think it's around about, I think in Africa probably around about 25,000 maybe. I don't know. That's a guess on my part. If any of you out there would like to just quickly research how many lions are thought to exist in the world, please feel free to send through the answer to that question to questions@wildearth.tv or hashtag Safari Live. I'll share it with everybody watching. But in the Kruger National Park last year, they reckon less than 1,000 lions. It'll be interesting to see what the other statistic is. And so this mating that we're seeing right now is very important. Whether it's postpartum mating or whether it's in actual fact a normal estrogen cycle where she's having her eggs fertilized, whatever it is, it's healthy, it's good to see. So as we're watching now, her body will be picking up again. So as he dominated her, she would have released some chemicals, would have been released in her body, and that would have driven away the urge to mate. What we saw was there was about a 10-minute or so gap between one mating to the other, so I suggest it's probably going to be around about the same. And right now her body's building up those chemical messages in her brain, and she's starting to feel an irresistible urge building, which the male will then respond to. That urge will become less and less frequent, and by the time they stop mating, it'll be about once every half an hour to once every 40 minutes or so. I think while we're waiting for that urge to manifest itself, it'll be a good time to send you over to Jamie for an update. I'll call you back as soon as any action happens.
I'm afraid to say, unlike Steph, I don't have any surprises up my sleeve. Just two rather nervous-looking impala, not that anybody could blame them. I think with the leopard lurking around last night, you cannot blame them for being on edge, especially with this wind. What are you looking at? What is there that has attracted your attention? She's interesting. Karula is somewhere here. She's in this very, very dense block that she loves so much, probably with a kill stashed under a tree or possibly in one, and her two little cubs are feeding upon it. It's very difficult at the moment. I can't even find where Aubrey says her tracks crossed the road. And I've lost Aubrey completely. But the two of us are continuing on our search. What's there, guys? They don't look startled, but they're both staring in the same direction. Oh, no, they've decided to relax a little bit. Perhaps sizing each other up as well. Now, if an impala does see something like a lion or a leopard, they start a frantic barking alarm call sound. Back to Steph. Lions are doing something.
She's not moving her tail to the side and making it very easy for him at all. That was actually unsuccessful. No, it was successful. Obviously just didn't look close enough. There she rolls over. Have a look at that belly of hers. Let's have a decent look there now. So I'm seeing old suckle marks. I'm not seeing new. She looks like she has lost her cubs. Those suckle marks are definitely not recent. I mean, it would be explained by the fact that she hasn't been close to her cubs for a couple of days now, and it's been very dry. So who knows exactly what's going on over here? We'll definitely know within the next couple of weeks for sure. But right now, you can definitely see that those suckle marks are not in use. He is beautiful though. And with that over and done with for now, I think we're going to send you back to Jamie. Sorry for stealing you away.
That's quite alright. No problems there in having stolen us away. I found what the impala were looking at with deep consternation. It was a very scary looking small nyala with its tiny, tiny, tiny little horns just starting to come through. Hasn't even begun to acquire the long dark coat of an adult male. It's got a slightly fluffy feel to it. And off it disappears. A very nervous looking nyala as well. As I said, this wind is definitely making them feel a bit uncomfortable. Speaking of nyala, James Black was wondering whether or not we eat any of the antelope in the same way that in America they eat venison or deer. And the answer is yes, people here do eat the antelope species in a sustainable way, in fact probably more sustainable and environmentally friendly than the sort of traditional farming practices of meat and other things. No, they do not here though. So all of the animals that you're seeing in this area are 100% safe from being killed and eaten. But it does happen a lot. What is a slight problem, not here, because it is very, very well patrolled and secure, but in certain reserves, the one thing that they have a problem with is bushmeat poachers that set up a snare in and around the fence lines that they can then catch the animals that come through. Now, before we judge them too harshly, because it does result in some tragic situations, often catching unintended targets like leopards or lions or even wild dogs. But before we judge them too harshly, bear in mind that South Africa is a country with some very serious socio-economic problems, and a lot of people are absolutely desperate and destitute. And as a result, they do try and catch the antelope that are outside or that are inside of protected areas. So it does happen. There are also legal stocks of antelope meat that you can buy pretty much at any butcher throughout the country. South Africans do eat the venison of the antelope species, but as I said, not in this area. These animals are 100% protected, and if you were to be found catching one and eating one, you would be guilty of poaching. And the same applies actually to fishing in these reserves as well. But there is most definitely... Oh, it's a waterbuck. Oh, of course, I couldn't possibly go a drive without seeing a waterbuck. It's been far too long. A waterbuck bull staring off into the distance, really well hidden. As I said, most of the animals are doing a fantastic job of hiding themselves away. In this case, behind a combination of tambuti, quarry bushes, and lead and knobthorn trees. A magnificent waterbuck bull, the symbol of the Sabi Sand. And just since we are on the subject of, or while we're on the topic of the conversation of poaching, and while we look at our magnificent bull, Daryl, we've actually been, the Sabi Sand is fortunate in that it has the finances and the abilities to put forward a huge effort in terms of anti-poaching. Rhino poaching is a problem throughout South Africa, an enormous problem, and the Sabi Sand is not immune. However, things have taken a very positive turn over the last few months. We don't show rhino for the very specific reason. First of all, it's taking a stance against rhino poaching. It's also the company's policy that we don't want to make it any easier for poachers to find them. The truth is, most of the rhino poaching comes from inside information anyway. However, and I can't go into detail, obviously, about the anti-poaching steps, but suffice to say there are enormous anti-poaching measures in place, and we have some very brave people who stay behind the scenes to thank for the safety of the animals here. Pangolin is another animal that gets poached. Again, not so much in the Sabi Sand, but bear in mind that we are open to the Kruger National Park, which in turn is open to places, desperate countries such as Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And that a great deal of the poaching profits go to those countries. The army is involved in protecting the Kruger National Park. It is sad, I know that it's something that Steph was discussing. It's not the Kruger National Park that I used to know, in terms of driving along the Letaba River or wherever you happen to be, and all of a sudden you see anti-poaching units moving through an area. And almost all of us, you'll find, have been involved in, as guides, almost all of us have been involved in some anti-poaching measure or another. Something that I spent, not that I'm in any way qualified or trained as an anti-poacher, but something we've spent a great deal of time doing, or I spent a great deal of time doing.